Hi, it's Joe here from the reserves team. So we went to Skiddaw a few days ago when the first proper snow of the season was on the ground because we wanted to tell you all about what's been going on there since we bought the reserve last year. But before we kick off, I just wanted to say a massive thanks to everybody who made this purchase possible. First of all to Aviva, who contributed £5 million as part of their partnership with the Wildlife Trusts to restore our Atlantic rainforests. Without them, we couldn't have done this. And then there's the 7,000 people who donated to our 1.25 million fundraising appeal. Astonishingly, we got all that money together within 6 weeks. A massive thank you to you all as well. We couldn't have done it without you. I hope you enjoy the story so far, and we'll go to the back of Skiddaw. Welcome everybody to November's podcast. We didn't have a podcast in October while Liz was swanning around northern Italy, but here we are, and this one, this podcast, we're going to cover all the things that have been going on our newest and biggest nature reserve at Skiddaw Forest, on what's been going on and where we're up to. Now, to do this podcast, we decided that the best thing to do would be to get everybody involved up at the back of Skiddaw and have a chat about what's been going on. Weather has meant that we aren't at Skiddaw. We are looking at Skiddaw. We're on the side of Skiddaw. We're stood in the snow in the beautiful sunlight, and it is gorgeous and very inspiring. But we didn't actually make it onto the reserve because of the conditions. And today I'm joined by three of the protagonists who are helping to make this 100-year vision we have for the restoration of Skiddaw Forest make it happen. We've got Pete Barron. Pete's been involved with Skiddaw for how many years, Pete?
About 35, Joe.
35 years, there you go. So he's got all the background and knows all the things that have been going on before we got the site and has been involved in what we're doing up until now. I'm also joined by the other Pete, and this is Pete Jones. And Pete Jones is our project manager for Skiddaw Forest. Morning, Pete.
Morning.
And we've also got Rowan Sharp. And Rowan's our community tree grower and seed collector for the project as well. And we've also got Liz, our fantastic producer, who's holding the microphone and doing all the stuff in the background. Now, we didn't make it up to Skiddaw, but like I said, we're stood in this beautiful winter wonderland looking out of the Lake District. And as I'm sure you all know, Skiddaw is our newest and biggest nature reserve. We were able to purchase the site last autumn. It's 1,200 hectares. It took me a while to get my head around this, but that's 12 square kilometres of upland. And it really is upland. The lowest point is at about 360 metres above sea level. So it's an amazing place, and it's an amazing opportunity for us to do some fantastic restoration work, putting missing habitats back into the landscape and restoring the habitats we have. Now, Pete, if you'd like to give us a bit of a flavour of your involvement in Skiddaw for the last 35 years.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, firstly, I would say that I was so excited to hear that the opportunity was going to be available to get Skiddaw Forest into a different management regime. It's been on my radar for years, and it's just been a dream, but that dream's come true, and you're going to be managing it, so that's fantastic. I was a National Park Ranger for 25 years, and in all that time, a large part of the Northern Fells were in my area, so Skiddaw Forest was an integral part of it. And so in that time, we kind of got involved in, well, it was a strange thing, really. Obviously, there was a farmer, great man, Mr. Waff. He was a superman, but he was living somewhere else. He had another farm, and it almost became like a de facto conservation manager on the estate. I mean, those days, sheep numbers were a lot higher. We have no sheep now, of course, but sheep numbers were quite high. And so tree planting was almost a no-no, but we wanted some, so I tried planting trees in the gills. We did heather cutting, we did peat blocking, we did grouse counts, we monitored some of the rare birds of prey. That was a really, really good time.
You've basically laid the groundwork for what we're doing now. Having done all that peatland work, planting the trees, like you say, doing all the experimentation. Right, so we've also got with us the other Pete Jones. Now, you're the project manager for Skiddaw. Started with us in January, but you also worked for me for 12 years before that, managing nature reserves for Cumbria Wildlife Trust.
Yep.
And immediately before that, you were working for RSPB Haweswater.
I was, yes.
So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about what you're up to and your role within the project.
So, I'm the project manager. My role is to oversee this whole project. I'm the only dedicated full-time person at Cumbria Wildlife Trust on the project at the moment. And so my role in this last year has been to do kind of all sorts of things, really. So we're doing a lot of prep work before we actually start a lot of these kind of restoration work. So we're doing a lot of baseline surveying. We're doing a lot of regulatory kind of stuff that we have to get kind of consents and permissions before we do a lot of this kind of work. And then, people engagement and guided walks and talks for local groups. So all sorts of kind of different stuff.
Differing from the Haweswater project in that this is your own, isn't it? You can make it your own.
Very much so. So at Wild Haweswater, I was a warden there alongside another warden and a whole team of people that were working on the project there. And that's a project that's been established now for quite a long time. This is, a completely different thing. It's kind of very large scale project, but it is just us that are working on it, and it is the very beginning of this kind of project for Cumbria Wildlife Trust. So it's amazing to be kind of in at the beginning, forging what this project is going to look like for decades to come.
Lovely, thank you. And then I've also got Rowan. Now, Rowan, you're our community tree grower. So you've been coordinating all the seed collection for all the trees that we're going to be growing. That's quite a task, isn't it?
It's going well. It really is quite a mammoth task considering how many trees we have to establish on Skiddaw, but it's been really amazing to hear of the enthusiasm of all my volunteers that have been involved so far in collecting seeds and helping out in the tree nurseries, and we've got a lot more of that still to come.
So what's been going on thus far? We've had the site for just over a year now. Tell us a little bit, Pete, about the kind of baselining and the kind of evidence that we've been gathering over the summer.
So one of the things that we've kind of got an opportunity to do at Skiddaw, because we've got a little bit of time on this, we're calling this a 100-year project, a bit of time just to actually work out what is on site. We have these plans and we've got an idea of what we want to do, but we want to find out exactly what's on site and then refine those plans accordingly. So we've been looking at getting people out doing lots of surveying work up on site, and we've been doing surveys in things like bryophytes. We've been doing surveys on birds. We've been doing surveys on invertebrates. We've had a whole NVC survey done, which is the National Vegetation Classification. It's a very repeatable method for being able to assess habitats and any changes in habitats going forward. We will be able to redo this, in future years and be able to kind of see the habitat change that we're looking at.
And all of this data informs our tree planting, doesn't it? Because there are quite a lot of regulatory hurdles that we have to jump through to get the kind of permissions and the consents together to do what we want to do.
Yeah, and I mean Skiddaw is a very important place anyway. We know that it is, in terms of its kind of biodiversity, it's lacking. There are things that we need to be doing to kind of boost that biodiversity, but that's not to say it isn't a special place as it is at the moment. So it is designated. It's a triple SI, special site of scientific interest. It's an SAC, which is a special area of conservation. And so we have to be proving that the work that we are going to be doing is not going to be impinging or causing problems for those kind of interest features that are already there. And so this baselining stuff is all about identifying where those are, and then we adjust our plans accordingly. So we think, if we're going to plant on this hillside, and actually that comes out as being areas of deep peat or dry heath priority habitat or whatever it is, we can actually adjust that and make sure that we're not planting in there, so that we are doing the best by the habitats and the conservation on site.
And one of the things is that you actually need to have, don't you, an environmental impact assessment just to plant trees where there were no trees before. And this is especially true, isn't it, because we are in the national park and it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and in some way it's going to take a long time, but we're going to be changing the landscape.
So that's a whole process that we're kind of going through at the moment. So like you say, we have to do kind of assessments on the kind of landscape impact of what we're doing. So, any kind of visual impact, landscape character assessments, they call it, for that. So we have to make sure that that we're kind of abiding by those kind of rules. And we also have to consult with various people as well around the area to make sure that we're not just doing this without other people knowing about it, basically.
And Pete, you were part of this baselining process, weren't you? You and another Pete actually did the bird survey for the site, didn't you?
Yeah, we did, yeah. I thought I knew Skiddaw quite well, but during these surveys we used two different methodologies. One was point counts to look for the important raptor population there, which is mostly merlins, I have to say, but it's a good population still. But also we did a transect system monitoring, and we went within 100 metres of everywhere on the site. And I can tell you that I'm quite fit, but it was brutal. And I can't believe this, but I added up on my GPS. I walked 80 kilometres on that survey. Wow. Even my dog was tired after some of those days, I can tell you. But yeah, I mean, back to the environmental impact assessment Pete was just talking about, is one of the things we were looking for was to check that the tree planting was not going to compromise any potential waders population that was on site. And clearly we did not find any waders. In fact, my own view is that what the Wildlife Trust are going to do on here in terms of the bird population, I don't mean raptors, but the more general population, it can only improve.
So we found we had a lot of skylark. Yep. We found we had a lot of grouse, meadowpipits, grouse in the heather, but there really wasn't. It's quite remarkable dearth of bird life, isn't it? So, what would you What would you really like to see back there once we've done some restoration work?
Well, I just think, you can't help but make the analogy between this site and what your project is here with the Carafran in southern Scotland. And John Savoury there, he did that amazing survey right from the start, like you're going to do, of what was there when they took the property over, what they've done now, all those trees are grown in Carafran, and they've linked it to the adjacent valley where nothing's happened. And the amount of woodland birds which have come into that site is just fantastic. And I think over time, and luckily it is a 100-year project, so I won't see that, and probably none of us, but it's gonna get better. There's
Absolutely.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, and there was a couple of warblers, wasn't there, in the trees around Skiddaw House, but that was it.
Yeah, well, Skiddaw House it's like a little oasis. And a lot of birds are going to spread out from that oasis into the woodland as it develops from the work that Pete's going to do.
From my point of view, it's kind of really heartening to see that, because there is such a kind of absence of birds around the place, and yet they are there. And it is that kind of thing. It's good to know that, even a small patch of trees like that, the birds will come to it. They will spread out and they will come into there. They're just waiting for that habitat.
Yeah.
And it also shows that trees will grow there, because there's a lot of naysayers who don't think trees are going to grow up there anyway. And and proper substantial trees are going to grow up there.
Trees will grow there without a doubt. And with the 30-odd years, and as you well know, I've pointed out some of the trees. I can tell exactly when I planted them. They're 30 years old, so you know how big, you know what's going to happen in 30 years, and they do definitely grow. Although you are, and Rowan in particular, with the species she's going to grow, you're going to have to be kind of selective, I think, as you go up the hill, because I planted oak trees in the back of the Skiddaw House there all those years back, and they're not that big. But other trees, the birch and the rowan and those and they're growing a lot bigger. And with your species mix, it'll get away, no doubt.
And that segues brilliantly to Rowan and what you're doing on your part of the project. Tell us a little bit about how seed collecting's been going over this back end, and what kind of species you've been getting.
Yeah, so tree seed collection occurs during the autumn period, so that's broadly speaking from the end of July till about now. I had my last seed collection event yesterday, which was really well. We collected loads of oaks from around the Rydal Water area, and we've been doing a lot of collection from Borrowdale area as well. It's really nice going there because that's temperate rainforest, one of our last sort of remaining areas, and with it being temperate rainforests that we're trying to create on Skiddaw, it's really nice to take volunteers to that and sort of like, here's a bit of an idea of the sort of species that we're looking at planting. To the trees that we collect from, we take that seed back to our tree nursery at Plumgarth, so that's just outside of Kendal, and we process that tree seed. Each species is a little bit different in terms of how it's sorted, so something like an oak you can put straight into a pot, it's really easy to do. Other things like hawthorn and rowan are a little bit trickier, So with those, we have to mash them up and put them through sieves and get all the moisture out so they don't rot. That's a bit of a lengthier process. And once all that's sorted, we pot them on. So we pot them on either at Plumglass. We've got a tree nursery that's slowly been set up there. We're hoping to have raised beds in soon, but we've got a greenhouse up already and a potting shed, which is amazing. But we're also working with Growing Well at Tebow, the therapeutic horticultural organisation. It's really amazing to be working with them to see the positive impact of growing, particularly with trees and getting your hands in the soil. So they're growing trees for us, and they're also helping us out with some of the collecting and sorting as well. 'Cause for us, it's really great to try and get as much of the community involved as possible.
Well, you just picked up on a really good point there, Rowan, I think, and it's something I'm really, really big on over the years I've been working with the environment and the National Park and John Muir Trust and what is that community connection, that local community connection is absolutely crucial to make sure you're going to be successful in what you do. If you can take people with you, it'll work. If you don't, if you've got people against you, it's an uphill struggle. But you take people with you, get them involved. Like Pete talks to them, we are working with and growing with them, and they're working with the local community, more volunteers, all that kind of thing. It's the way forward, and it's critical in my experience.
And that's why we've created 4 community tree growing hubs. One at Plumglass, one at the top of Bassenthwaite, one at our nursery already at Gosling site, and one at our site in Cold Springs as well.
Can you talk about what it's like going out collecting seeds for the day and how much your volunteers enjoy that?
Seed collecting, it's great.
Hang on.
Yeah, I love my seed collection events. We get to we go for a walk in the Lake District, and we don't get very far from the car park usually before we're spotting there's an oak, there's a hawthorn, there's a rowan, and my volunteers absolutely love it and getting involved. And it gets quite mindful actually when you end up just sat on the floor collecting acorns around you, and it really makes you slow down and appreciate the things that are around you. It's a really nice way to get people involved. And then my volunteers have been going out independently themselves to places that maybe they walk locally on, and if they spot some of the trees that we're interested in, collecting those and then dropping them off.
Because you've spent quite a lot of time this summer actually putting together kind of guidebooks and handbooks about how to do all of this, haven't you?
Yeah, this type of volunteering is quite unlike anything we've done before because it's a little bit more independent. A lot of our volunteering is done on our reserves, but this is sending people out on their own and making sure that they're safe and that they know what they're doing and they're collecting seed responsibly. So we're following the Q's Millennium Seed Bank guidelines for collecting to make sure that we don't over collect from any one area or any one tree or any particular species. So although at its core, it's just taking a few seeds from a tree, it's a little bit more to it than that. And when we've been going out on seed collection as well, I've been trying to tie that in with a few other projects. So gone out with Pete, who's told us all about crab apples or the wild
apple.
Yes.
I was going to say, because I was going to bring you in, Pete, because you actually run your own little community nursery, don't you, down in Borrowdale?
Yeah, we have on the Thornithwaite farm site, which is privately owned these days. We've repurposed the sheep pens into a tree nursery. There's some irony there, I think. Yeah, but we're growing kind of local specialist trees, and my real specialist tree is the genetically pure Borrowdale wild apple.
And you also specialise in doing some of those very rare Arctic alpines that we are going to try to be getting back onto those upper limits on Skiddaw.
Yeah, I was really hoping you were going to talk about montane willows. It's fantastic. Yeah, we've grown all those downy willows. We need some new sites now. Next month we're putting this year's stock into a fenced exclosure above Wideman. So that's going to be great. That's 650 metres or something. And the next one, when you start planting trees the following winter, hopefully, if you want them, we will have some downy willows, tea leaf willows and whatever else that you might be able to take.
Be perfect.
One thing I have noticed with kind of growing things is nursery alder, nursery crabapple. They just absolutely grow crazy from a nursery. Compared with growing stuff from local stock, local seed, and growing them locally, the stuff from the nursery just seems to go crazy in terms of growth. And I do just wonder whether it's something in the nursery, it's fertiliser or what, and they just go mad. And I just think that the local stuff just seems to be slower, steadier, stronger, more adaptive.
But I think one of the reasons for kind of looking locally is that, when you look at other tree planting projects where they have, for instance, started off getting in trees from nurseries, a long way away, from lowland areas, they've been planting them in. The amount of trees that are dying off is very, very significant. And actually, when you start using locally sourced trees, you have a much better survival rate. Yeah. And we want to try and maximise that as much as we can.
And I was going to say, the last thing we want to do is to be buying trees in where we don't know the provenance, where they could come from anywhere. So that's another great reason for sourcing our trees locally. So we've talked a lot about trees, but we haven't talked about the peatland up there at the back of Skiddaw. And there's about 400 hectares of deep peat that is in need of restoration. Now, Pete, you've been involved in past restoration of these peatland areas, haven't you, over the past 30 years?
Thinking back, it hadn't become mainstream to start blocking moorland grips, the drains that were dug out. They were kind of dug out by a spade at one point, but then they've eroded down to, as deep as me, some of them. I lost my dog down one once. And so it was decided to try and do something. And believe it or not, we very first started with straw bales, but we rather quickly realised that wasn't very sustainable, and it was a bad thing to import other things into the site. So then we went on to heather bales, and we cut the heather with a machine, and those round bales were put into the grips. That worked quite well in many places, but then once the bales were undermined into the mineral of the grip, the water got away. So finally Natural England did agree to using a machine, to put some peat dams in. And we did that, and it was calculated roughly every 7 metres, if I remember, there was a dam put in. Techniques have moved on, and I'm sure there's a lot more work and kind of more modern ways of doing these kind of things. But it was the best we did at the time, and to be honest, it held pretty well.
So one of the things that we've done as part of the baselining stuff this year is we got our in-house peat restoration team at Cumbria Wildlife Trust up to do a big peat assessment and see what the current condition is, and kind of put together a plan. So they came up and they did lots of peat depth analysis and seeing how wet the peat bog was. Yeah, so one of the things that they did is kind of assess the impact of the work that Pete was doing 30 years ago or whatever. And there are pits, we were just saying, around the top of places like Hare Crag and stuff. Those bunds are actually doing well, and that bit of peat bog is actually looking really good. But there are other bits where those bunds that were put in haven't done as well. Like Pete says, it's often when it erodes right down to the mineral layer, and it still is quite difficult to kind of do restoration work when it's got that bad. And we have a plan now, so we're just we're looking at hopefully getting that started next winter is the idea.
Yeah, and one of the things about the re-wetting, because there is a lot of heather up there, and it is quite there is quite a fire risk, isn't there? Because there's a lot of quite mature heather. But one of the things that the re-wetting will do will be to subdue that heather and reduce that fire load.
One of the reasons that they drained Skiddaw, the back of Skiddaw, originally was for grouse. So it was a grouse moor. It was shot as a grouse moor from Victorian times onwards. And one of the things you need if you've got a grouse moor is you need lots of heather, and you need that heather quite carefully managed, so you have lots of different ages of it for the grouse at different life stages. So their goal was to try and drain try and get the wetness off the surface so that it was good for the heather, and that's the legacy that we have up there at the moment. But by the time we've re-wetted that, it should mean that the dominance of that heather kind of reduces.
I think it's fascinating discussions like this where time moves on over a number of decades, and during the time with the park, we went in there and we were actually heather burning, which is an absolute no-no now. You just don't do that now. But we did, and we did it very much under control, very small sections. We worked with the Game Conservancy at the time. And in a Lake District context, it's a really good population of grouse in there, and the survey this year proved that once again. But we were burning for the grouse, and we actually put grit out as well, and water and that kind of thing. But it's just something you would not just not think about now, would you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you say, as time goes on, these kind of things sort of change, and new evidence comes to light. And certainly with heather burning, the evidence is there that it's actually quite detrimental to the soils and the peats underneath that vegetation layer. But also, for water quality, downstream flooding, all of those kind of things. The evidence just is now showing that there are different ways of doing this.
The other thing that we had done, and again this was before you started, Pete, was Cambridge University came up and took a whole load of peat cores and took them away to look at the paleo-ecological evidence that is preserved within the deep peats, and the deep peats do go to 3 metres, at least 3 metres, don't they, in parts of the site, and we've recently got the reports back, and these paleoecological studies, they can look at the pollen, the microfossils, whether there's been any water on site, whether there's been any burning on site, and you can build a picture of the history of the site since the last ice age. And it's really quite fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, so going back thousands of years, so the peat on site, they reckon, is over 4,000 years old. So it's been kind of building up since then. And because peat, the way that peat kind of accumulates in conditions without any air, so you don't get any kind of decomposition of stuff. It doesn't rot into nothing. So you get this whole timeline kind of built up throughout these peat cores. And so by analysing all of these things, the carbon deposits and the spores and the pollen and everything, you can start to really kind of build up this picture of what the site was like. And there are some really kind of interesting things that kind of come out of it. So you have things like, about 2,000 years ago, there was quite a lot of birch pollen that is laid down in the peat at that time, so much so that they think that there was not just birch around the peat bogs, but actually on the peat bog itself. And those trees have kind of, come and gone over the years. But definitely evidence that there was trees around.
But there is specific points, isn't there, where there was trees, the trees disappear, there is evidence of burning, and you can actually see like the clearance, then potential cultivation or management for something else. And the predominance of heather that comes through, and especially recently, this massive predominance of heather and heather pollen within the peat.
When the peat builds as well, so you have this kind of the medieval warm period, as they call it, where you have significant peat building, and then you have this kind of little ice age that comes in afterwards, and the amount of sphagnum growing at that time when it was cooler drops off, then the amount of peat starts to slow down. So it's a fascinating picture kind of through history of what the site was like.
Just remind us of what you're actually going to be doing in terms of restoring the peat.
The peat restoration team have been identifying a couple of different things, really. One of them is the peat drains. So these are drains that have been cut by hand through the peat. The other one is any areas of eroded peat, so what we call peat hags, where you've got these eroded open faces of peat. Peat is a soil that develops, so without oxygen. As soon as it's exposed to the air, it starts to decay completely, and that releases a lot of carbon. So one of the things that we need to do is to raise the water level, which obviously stops the air getting to it. And with the drains, that's a question of, you are going in with an excavator and you are basically creating little bunds to block those ditches made out of peat. So they're made out of peat, they consolidate within the rest of that peat layer, and they should be much more sustainable, much more like kind of long lasting. And then where you have peat hags, where you've got these open faces of peat, what they do with excavators again is to reprofile those. So you kind of scrape back the sort of top layer of vegetation, you reprofile the peat's edge, and then you push that vegetation back on top, so you're effectively kind of wrapping it up in the vegetation that's already there, and that stops that open face of peat, and again keeps the air out and keeps the peat forming basically. And
how many times has the word peat been said on this podcast?
far too
I
many.
know, because we did a peat one. There was nobody who called Pete involved.
Peat cast, isn't it? Not a podcast.
Welcome to the Peatcast.
So we've set the scene of what's going on Skiddaw at the moment. Pete, give us a little bit of an idea about what we're going to be doing within the next year, 2 years, 5 years. Like we always say, and we've always tempered everybody's excitement with, this is a 100-year vision, and this is going to take a long time. So give us a little idea about what's going to happen in that near future bit.
We are looking at wanting to start tree planting within the next year or so. Tree planting is done in the winter months. We won't be planting in the middle of summer when the trees are growing. They have to be dormant when they're planted. So we are going to be planting hopefully next winter, and that's going to be the first year of many years of tree planting. So we have many hundreds of thousands of trees that need to establish up here, and that is going to take time to do. But not only that, but we are looking at doing the peat restoration work as well. We would like to be doing that next winter as well. In terms of the peat restoration one, that's one that in Skiddaw terms is a relatively quick win for us. With the trees, we're going to be planting trees for years to come. And those trees are going to be very, very slow at growing. But with the peat work, we can actually get the vast majority of that done, hopefully within a winter season. And there will need to be bits and pieces that we do to sort of help that along over the years. But that will be something that hopefully we can get done and will start to show good impacts relatively quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking just in terms of the trees, it'll probably take quite a while before people even notice that there are trees on there, because we've been looking around at tree planting projects before and you're going, and where are these trees that they've planted? And then suddenly they're pointing them out and there's these tiny little saplings in the ground, and then once you get your eye in, you start spotting them everywhere. But certainly to start with, it's not that much to notice. It's sort of quite in keeping with the landscape.
Absolutely, and we do have to be very realistic about this, that we're actually putting back woodland to places we do not have woodland. We have got trees, haven't we? Pete was saying he knows where the highest tree in England is at over 900 metres.
920 metres.
920 metres. We know the trees can grow, but I mean, it is going to take a ridiculously long time. It's going to be incredibly difficult. The soil hasn't had trees on it for so long. Basically, the soil biota is going to have to change before things start to thrive up there. Pete, you've got a bit more of an idea of how slow these things can be and how long these things take.
Yeah, it's such an impressive ambition, this. But like George just said, I think we have to tinge it with some realism. I'll just chip one thing in that made me think when Joe was talking there, is that we're going to grow trees, and we do grow trees in nurseries, right? And then we're going to take them to 600 metres. And I just have this thing in my mind that how are they going to take coming out of a nursery with an element of richness in there, sticking it up there in some acid soil at that altitude? I think we just have to be really realistic, and I think we just have to accept an element of loss, shall we say, and we'll not know what that loss will be until we start.
Yeah, and when we've been looking at kind of similar projects, you mentioned Carafran before, and places like the Woodland Trust site at Snaysholme in Yorkshire, when they're talking about doing kind of similar planting to this, they were looking at kind of 50% losses of trees. You plant trees, half of them are going to die. And so that's kind of, we've been sort of factoring that into the number of trees we're looking at on site, because that kind of gives us the best chance of success.
I mean, Carafran's such a brilliant model to go by, isn't it? Such a brilliant example. But you got a Carafran that starts at 130 metres, and the trees have done really well. But 400 metres and above is our baseline, so it is going to be difficult. We are going to have a lot of losses. I'm sure there's going to be tipping points within that. Once we started to establish a few things, then more things will be established. And we have been saying, we're going to have to grow 600,000 trees to establish 300,000 trees. But we're guessing at that, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Till it kicks off. I alluded to it earlier about an example, and just around the corner from where we stood now, there's what's called the Millennium Wood, and so we know that's 25 years old, but it's around about the same height as Skiddaw House, and so that's kind of an example of what you're going to get probably in the next 25 years in terms of what will grow, how much it will grow, and what species are best to grow.
But everything is small and stunted, and it's the climate up there dictates that these things are not going to be big trees by any stretch of the imagination.
And that's why I get so excited about the montane element to this, with the junipers and the willows. Come on, because
those are the species that are really adapted for those kind of conditions,
yeah.
And that's the stuff that's missing so much in these kind of areas, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I know you've done loads of work on this and saying about the downy willows on the coves of Hell Valley, but we've got nothing on flat grassy slopes like this, have we? You know, it's all on steep ground. It's all places where sheep haven't been able to get to in the past or can't get to now. And we've got this opportunity to put that habitat back on these open fell sides, haven't we?
At scale. And I will come back to something that when this first opportunity came, this in my lifetime, whatever's left of it and what's gone before, this is the best opportunity I've ever seen in the Lake District. And that's why I wanted to be involved from the start, to change to have nature recovery in the way that we've just described. It's amazing.
And on that note.
Well, I think that's a fantastic chat, and thank you all so much for coming up here. It's been brilliant. I mean, to be stood here and looking out on this snowy vista in the sun. Massive thanks to Pete Barron and for being involved in the project. Massive thanks to Pete Jones, and we'll be hearing lots more from you, I'm sure, on the podcast in the future. Massive thanks to Rowan. Brilliant work in setting up these nurseries and getting all this seed collection going. And I have to say a massive thanks to Liz, who hasn't been on the podcast like she normally is, but has been doing all the work in the background and is going to be spending hours and hours editing all of our chats down to something manageable. So that's it for this month. We're going to do a review of the year for the December podcast, and we'll be going back talking to some of the people who we've talked to over the year, looking at some of the projects, getting a roundup of everything that's been happening. Not everything that's been happening, but a lot of what's been happening within the Trust. So hopefully we'll see you then, and thanks a lot.